So, 3 things you got to know for the rest of this chapter: midpoint, distance, and slope. You have to memorize these 3 formulas for Friday. The first question on the quiz is going to be write out the midpoint formula, the distance formula, and the slope formula. And I'm going to walk around and check them. This is going to come in handy a lot next week also, when we start classifying quadrilaterals. So make sure you know all 3 of these. You should know slope already. You've actually done them all. You should know them all already. It just got to remember. So this is all we're going to work on today. First example we're going to do is what you've always done in the past. We're going to use regular numbers. Then we're going to add in letters. Because eventually next week we're going to start looking at quadrilaterals where it's not like a specific length. It's like the length is A and the width is B. So we're going to practice now so that when we have to do stuff next week it's a little bit easier. So let's do A. We're going to find the slope, distance, and midpoint. So remember, this is x1, y1, x2, y2. So the slope, we'll start with slopes, and since that's what we've been working on. M equals -5 minus 5 over 2 minus -1. What's -5 minus 5? -10. And what happens to the 2 minus the -1? Plus, so -10/3. You can just leave it like that. You're done. Okay, because you can't reduce that. Midpoint. Remember, midpoint is just a point. You're going to take the 2 x's, add them together, cut it in half. Take the 2 y's, add it together, cut it in half. So -1 plus 2 divided by 2. 5 plus -5 divided by 2. What's -1 plus 2? 1. So this becomes 1/2. 5 plus -5. It's just 0. If you have 0 over a number, what's the answer? So 1/2, 0. And then the distance is the worst. Distance is the worst. So x2 minus x1, 2 minus -1 squared plus -5 minus 5 squared. The thing that kind of helps me with distance is that it's just the slope stuff, but in not a fraction anymore. So this became 3 squared, -10 squared. What's 3 squared? Bless you. -10 squared. 100. So we get the square root of 109. So there's our 3 answers. Slope, distance, midpoint. Okay. The next 3 examples. There's only 3 of them because they're long. We're going to not just have numbers anymore. We're going to have letters. Okay. You think of a lot of this is like combining like terms, just regular algebra stuff that you've done in the past. I'm going to try and tell you where most people make the mistakes because it shows up every year. So now I have AC in 3A, 4C. Eventually, like I said, next week this will be like a picture, but without a coordinate plane. So that's why we kind of work on it now. So I label x1, y1, x2, y2, especially because there's letters involved. So the slope here, if you write it out, is 4c minus c, 3a minus a. Now be careful. This doesn't become 4 and 3. It's not like the c's cancel each other out. Think about this as 4c minus 1c, 3a minus 1a. Because remember, in algebra, if there's no number in front of a variable, it's 1, right? What ends up happening a lot of the times is people cross out the c's and just put 4. But what's 4 minus 1? What's 4 minus 1? Thank you. 3c over, what's 3 minus 1? 2. So 2a. So you leave the letters, kind of ignore them, and just do the regular numbers. Can we reduce 3 over 2? No. So this is my slope. As weird as it looks, that's it. I'm done. So if you need to, every time when you see just an A and a C, think 1A, 1C. Does that make sense? So now when I do midpoint, same thing applies. We're going to add the x's. A plus 3a divided by 2. C plus 4c divided by 2. Oops. Now, a plus 3a is not 3a squared. That's a times 3a. Again, think about it as a 1. What's 1 plus 3? 4. So you get 4a divided by 2. 1c plus 4c. 5c divided by 2. Is this making sense? It's just a lot of like algebra, combining like terms kind of stuff. If you can simplify the numbers, simplify the numbers. See how you can divide 4 divided by 2? So you can make this 2a and then 5c over 2. Because I can't simplify 5c over 2. So all we're doing is adding in the numbers. Letters, I mean. Questions so far? And then distance is the tricky one. So 3a minus a squared, 4c minus c squared. So again, the a and the c is a 1. So 3a minus 1a gives me 2a, the whole thing squared. 4c minus 1c gives me 3c, the whole thing squared. Does that line make sense? Here's another issue that pops up. When we go to square it, what's 2a squared turn into? You not only have to square the a, you have to square the 2. This whole thing squared is 4a squared. You have to not only square the number, you have to square the letter. 3c squared then turns into what? 9c squared. Does that make sense? Now, can you combine an a and a c? Are they the same? No. So, we're done. Don't do anything else. This is your final answer. What a lot of people want to do is take the square root and give me 2a plus 3c. But think about with numbers. Think about with numbers. If the a's weren't there, because this is what everybody wants to do. They give me this. You don't have to write this down. And then they give me this answer. Because they square rooted everything. But think about if the a and the c weren't there. If you just had 4 plus 9, what's the square root? What do you normally do here? Add them together, you get the square root of 13. You can't just say this is 2 plus 3, so this equals 5. Right? So don't do this. Don't do this. Just leave it as 4a squared plus 9c squared. Okay, if you can't combine, don't. They don't look the same. Just stop. This is where math starts to become an art and not necessarily grounded in reality. Questions so far? I know it's exciting. Okay, we got 2 more examples. I'm trying to give you ones that look similar to the homework. So for C, let's do the same thing. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. So for slope, you get 7b minus b again, 3a minus a. So what is the numerator? What's 7 minus 1? So 6b. What's 3 minus 1? Close. Now, can you divide 6 divided by 2? What do you get? So you can divide these numbers and you get 3. You just leave the 3 on top. So it's 3b over a is my final answer. So if you can divide them, that's fine. If it's a whole number, you just leave it on top. So far, so good? Midpoint. A plus 3a divided by 2. B plus 7b divided by 2. What does this turn into? For A. And B plus 7b gives me how many b's? 8b. Can I, because those are both even numbers, cut them both in half? Because there's no letter on the bottom, I don't have to write it like this. I can just leave it 2a, 4b. So it's taking something you already know how to do, distance, midpoint, slope, and adding a little bit more difficulty. Because that's the way math works. Okay, last one, distance. Square root 3a minus a squared 7b minus b squared. Again, if you have to do the same slope and distance, they should kind of match up. The first thing's the denominator, the second thing's the numerator. So 3a minus a turns into 2a squared 6b squared. So don't forget, square the letter and the number. So you end up with 4a squared 36b squared. And you leave it like that. Because you can't combine a's squareds and b squareds. Questions? Okay, the last one's the hardest. But it actually ends up simplifying to a pretty easy thing. So 1 point is at 2C, 2D. That's my x1, y1. x2 is this whole thing. 2C plus 2E. y2 is at 2D again. And this, like I said, this will come in handy next week when we have to start looking at this kind of stuff. Where it's like very abstract. So for slope, y2 minus y1. So 2D minus 2D. x2 minus x1. 2C plus 2E minus 2C. What do you think happens with 2D minus 2D? You end up with just 0. It's the same thing subtracted. So my numerator is 0. What happens in the denominator? The 2 C's also cancel out. And all I have left is 2E. For slope, if you have 0 on the top, what's the slope? 0. If 0 was on the bottom, what would be my slope? Undefined. Because that could happen too if these were in reverse order. So I'm done. So actually it looks more difficult, but my answer is just the easiest answer. Okay, let's try midpoint. 2C plus 2C plus 2E, all divided by 2. 2D plus 2D divided by 2. I wish we had more room. Okay, this side becomes a little bit tricky. You got to combine like terms. So you end up with 4C's plus 2E divided by 2. This side, 2D and 2D add up to 4D. So I just combined these two. Isn't everything here divisible by 2? They're all even numbers on the top. So when you go to divide this by 2, divide both things. When I taught Algebra 1, I used to teach it like draw a heart. You gotta divide both. So this becomes 2C plus an E, and this becomes 2D. Crazy. I just divided these by 2. This cancels. That's how you just get the E. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay, last one is this distance. So, x2 minus x1. 2C plus 2E minus 2C squared plus 2D minus 2D squared. What did we say with slope? What happens with the 2 C's here? They cancel. So you have the square root of 2E squared. What happens with the 2 D's here too? Don't they cancel? So that whole thing just goes away. It'd be like adding 0 squared. And 0 squared is 0. So all you have left is the square root of 4E squared. Because I have a single term, I can actually take the square root. and I have a perfect square. So this actually turns into just 2e. You only do that when you have a single term and it's a perfect square. Yeah, this one's the... You can't just stop like you did here. Here we had 2 terms, so don't take the square root. We had 2 terms and a plus in between. Here, because of this canceling, we only have 1. Yes.
So if it's not a perfect square, do we still square root it since it's by itself?
You can, you just have to leave it. It's a weird... Like if you had... Well, it won't end up happening because you're always squaring and then square rooting. But if you had like 10e squared like that, you could write it as e times the square root of 10. Which is annoying to look at. Any other questions?